Had too much to talk about this morning, so we are back for an afternoon edition of Locked On Blue Jackets, and it's a Mailbag Monday. So we're talking about Sean Monahan, the playoffs, and should the Blue Jackets go and get Owen Power? All of this and more on today's bonus Locked On Blue Jackets.
You're Locked On Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am, as always, your host Jay Foster, here to give you the good, the bad, and the ugly about your favourite team and mine, the Columbus Blue Jackets. Before we get things started, I want to thank everyone for making this your first listen of the day every single day. Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms and over on YouTube. We are doing a bonus Monday episode. I got some really good mailbag questions and I looked at them and was like, this is going to take more than one segment to answer a bunch of them. So we're doing a bonus. More content. Yay. Bunch of really good questions. I got a couple through email and I got a couple on Twitter. So let's start off with an easy one. Peterman Peter is checking in on my playoff prediction. Is it still yes, or do I no longer think the Blue Jackets are going to make the playoffs? If you'd asked me before the Four Nations break, I probably would have said, yeah, I think they'll fall just short. Now, watching, again, another Zach Werenski masterclass on Saturday, getting Marchenko back, getting Jenna back, getting Fabro back, like, we're going to get Monahan back sooner or later. We'll talk about Monahan in a second here. Yeah, this team is making the playoffs. It really does depend on, it is a little bit, their destiny is a little bit in their own hands and also in the hands of everyone around them. Like I talked about this morning, the standings are so tight between the first wildcard space and like 8th in the rankings there. So the 10 teams that are not in the top 6 spots on either side, between number 1, the Red Wings, the 64 points, and number 8, the Flyers, is 57. So 7 points between top of the wild card and 8th place. Like, then you've got the Penguins that are at 55. So, 9 points out of first place in the wild card race, not in the, the standings race as a whole. Like the only team that's really out of it is Buffalo. I think Penguins are going to join them sooner rather than later. But like, even then, the Tampa Bay Lightning are only 4 points ahead of the Red Wings as well. Like, there's a little bit more space in the Metro. The New Jersey Devils are in 3rd with 70 points. The Blue Jackets are 8 points behind them with 2 games in hand. So they could still catch them, but we'll see, right? But, like, the Blue Jackets very much could make the playoffs, and I do still think that is a likely scenario. They are going to have to get some out-of-town luck, though, right? Like, they need the Wings to start losing. They need the Senators to start losing. They need the Bruins to start losing. Ideally, the Rangers could start losing as well. I would enjoy that. And then, once you get down into Islanders, Canadians, Flyers, all the Blue Jackets have to do is keep ahead of them, right? But Blue Jackets at 62 points, Bruins at 61, Rangers at 60. And then you got the Senators above them at 62 and the Red Wings at 64. So, like, they need these teams to start losing, and also they need to win, right? So it is very much they have to keep pace with the rest of the division and also take steps above some teams. So it's not, it's not a case of as long as they just keep doing what they're doing, they're going to make the playoffs. I do think they are going to have to take another step, whether that's, again, getting Monahan back in a couple of weeks, whether that's adding at the deadline, whether that's, just everything coming together, people being, galvanized coming out of the Four Nations break. Obviously, everyone got a good long rest, apart from Zach Werenski, who apparently doesn't need a rest. So I still think this team makes the playoffs. And if they don't, it's going to be real close. I talked about this on Locked On NHL this morning as well. Actually, I did a hit over there with Gil Martin, the host. We talked a little about the outdoor game and how the outdoor game is not only like cool and exciting, and it's the first outdoor game in Columbus. It's the first outdoor game for the Blue Jackets, and it's going to be great. And I'm going to be there in Columbus. I'm going to have so much fun. The Red Wings are in direct competition with them for a playoff spot at the minute. Like, it really could be a case of whoever wins the outdoor game makes the playoffs. So it's going to be real close. But who can say? I still think they make it. If they don't, I won't be upset. But just what a story, right? Like, it would just be so much fun. I think that the NHL should just kind of let this happen. Let the Blue Jackets make the playoffs. It's going to be such a good story if they do. I don't know if they'll do anything when they get there, but I do think it's going to be fun if and when they do. And it's going to be when. I do believe the Blue Jackets are going to make the playoffs. Let's talk a little bit about. I talked about Monahan there. Let's talk a little bit about Sean Monahan. He's started skating. I don't know if he was skating over the Four Nations break. He skated, I think, this weekend or just before the weekend when teams, reported back. He still has a brace on his wrist, or he did as of, I want to say Wednesday night was the Cannonball, the charity event that the Blue Jackets do every year. He was there. He had a brace on his wrist. So, he's clearly not 100% yet. I still think he's probably a little bit a ways away. But the fact that he's skating is a really good sign. But Hey Spongy wants to know, I believe Monahan is already skating. Do you think he's going to pull a Marchenko and just become healthy a few weeks before schedule to play this Saturday at the Shoe? Also, there's been no Dina Weinheimer this season. When is she going to be on the pod next? I hope soon, because I also love when Dina is on the show. So we'll have to get that sorted out. Maybe we'll schedule something. Dina and I are getting dinner when I'm in Columbus this weekend, so we'll make some plans. We'll have a Monsters Monday with Dina soon, I promise. Sean Monahan. I do not think he'll play in the outdoor game. Never say never, and I think it's going to really depend on, what this week looks like. The Blue Jackets did not practice this morning. They will probably skate tomorrow. We might see what's happening there. I know Eric Gabranson joined morning skate on Saturday, which is a great sign for him. Monahan skating by himself still, and I think probably it's you skate by yourself for a couple of days and you see how it goes, and then maybe you move up to light contact or skating with the guys, and then you are a full participant in practice. I don't think he plays at the Shoe, but if he could be back before March 8th, which I think is the earliest he's projected to be back, I think that could be great, right? And Boone Jenner was projected to be back mid-March. I think actually no, Boone Jenner was projected to be back by the outdoor game, right? And he's back a week and a half early, which is great. Marchenko, they were like, yeah, it's probably going to be 6 weeks for Marchenko, and he missed 19 days. So, again, very different injuries. I know that Monahan had a setback with his injury. Obviously, he was supposed to be out for a week or two, and that turned into another 8 weeks on top of that. I don't know if he had surgery or not, but he is skating, which is great news, and hopefully he will be back. Like I said, sooner rather than later. I think he's projected to be back somewhere between March 8th and March 22nd or 23rd, I think that's the 6 to 8 week timeline anyway. So if he returns in a week's time, he's only about a week ahead of schedule. I don't think he plays at the Shoe. But you've got to think that that's a target for him, right? You've got to think, okay, he's supposed to be healthy around about March 8th. If he can get cleared a week earlier and play in the Shoe, play in the outdoor game, you've got to think that that's a target. Maybe a little bit less for him than it was for Boone Jenner, who obviously lifelong Blue Jacket, has never played in an outdoor game. Sean Monahan, I believe, has played in at least one. I could be wrong about that, but I believe he played when the Flames played outside back in the day. And he doesn't have the same, attachment to Columbus. However, it does sound like they're going to be honoring Johnny Gaudreau at this game, the way they have all season, etc. And you've got to think that Monahan wants to be there for that. If not playing, then he will almost certainly be in attendance, right? So, do I think he'll be back? No. Would I be surprised if he shows up and he's playing on Saturday? Not even a little bit, right? Again, hockey players are frustrating, and having worked with a lot of them personally, not NHL players, but the guys I work with back home, they don't care how injured they are. They want to know when they can play again, right? I had a friend who played on a team, and he broke his wrist, and he was like, well, I'm going to get the cast off and then I'm going to play the next day. And we were all like, I don't think that's true, but that's just what hockey players are like, right? They want to play, they want to be on the team, they want to be skating. So I can imagine Monahan is exactly the same. And like I said, we'll we'll see, right? I would love to see him back on the ice. I miss him. I think the team misses him. I think they miss him on the ice and off the ice, right? He's been a real boost this season, both like in terms of, well, if Sean Monahan can show up and have this great season when he's, grieving the loss of his best friend, then we can all do the same thing, right? So I think having him back is going to be, again, a really big boost, a really great, a really great jump for the team. Again, he's their deadline guy. Boone Jenner a little bit as well, but for me, Monahan is their trade deadline acquisition. Now, I did get a question about the trade deadline, or not necessarily about the trade deadline specifically, but I know Fenrir Vaga, friend of the show, has not a question necessarily, but Owen Power is oddly enough rumored on the block. I would do whatever I can to bring him in. If you're going to spend money on defense, I'd be on board. He's 22 years old. He's huge. He can skate, and he's a solid two-way guy. Both first-round picks, Lindstrom or Chinikov, and Charlie Ellick would be my offer. What are my thoughts? I have a lot of thoughts about this. Shockingly, I am a huge Owen Power guy. I love the Michigan connection. Again, he's really, really good friends with Kent Johnson, which is not nothing, right? It's the Blue Jackets love to do the buddy system, and I think that Johnson would be thrilled if they brought Owen Power in. But I like him as a player a lot. He is. I don't know whether it's that he always plays well against Columbus, but every time they play Buffalo, I am always like, man, Owen Power is a really annoying player to play against, and it seems like he has kind of fallen out of favor with Buffalo, which is wild, because I'm sure they just signed him to like a huge new contract. I'm just pulling up Buffalo's Puckpedia page right now. Yeah, he is making $8.35 million until 2031. So he just signed a 7-year, almost $60 million cap hit. He's only going to be 28 by the time that contract is done. Like he's only, like I said, only 22. Still very young. For whatever reason, has, again, like Buffalo, I don't know what it is. I feel like Buffalo is allergic to having too many good young players, or there's something weird going on in that organization. But they were like, well, we got Rasmus Dahlin, so now we don't need Owen Power anymore, I guess. Which seems incorrect to me. But yeah, I absolutely would bring Owen Power in. Making the money work, I think, would be tricky. You'd have to move some money in the other direction, I think. If only because, like, the Blue Jackets have, again, $1 bajillion in cap space right now. But that won't always be true. Like, Vronkov needs a contract this summer. Olivier needs a contract this summer. Fabro needs a contract. Like, there's lots of guys that are going to need contract. In 2 years, Adam Fantilli is going to need a new contract as well. Cole Sillinger, Boone Jenner. You can't just add money now and think, oh, we'll work it out later. Now, the cap is going to go up next season by about $5 million, so that does help. And again, the Blue Jackets have the most cap space in the league by a lot. But for me, anyway, if you want to bring in Owen Power, you have to figure out how to get rid of David Severson's contract. And whether that's you send Severson as well to Buffalo for Owen Power, and you add like both firsts plus Lindstrom plus Severson plus another guy would probably be my offer, and then you do Power plus probably a B or a C tier prospect just to send the other way, because I feel like teams are allergic to just sending one player for one player, or like not one player for one player, but teams are always like, well, if you give us 7 things, then we'll throw you a 6th round pick, right? That's maybe what I would do. I do think, again, I would love to bring Owen Power into the mix. I like him a lot. I think he would fit in well. I think you have Werenski and Fabro, and then you have Matejchuk and Power as your top 4. I would do that way more easily than I would do Seth Jones, right? That to me is a top 4 that is going to be good for a long time. I think Power and Matejchuk would work well together. Again, Owen Power's got friends on the team. We talk about the Go Blue Jackets. We talk about the Michigan connection. We've got a ton of Michigan guys. Bring Owen Power into the fold. Why not? Eventually, all of the Michigan guys will be on our team. But I like this idea a lot. I'm not sure how likely it is to happen. I don't know that he is a guy that is maybe on the radar of the Blue Jackets. I know Don Waddell is like, well, I am open to bringing in a young guy with term, but I'm not like 100% on that, right? It's it feels very unlikely. I know that that's what Don Waddell says, but my heart says that what he's going to do is probably add, a veteran at the deadline and maybe take a risk on someone who is younger but does not have that 7-year contract locked in, right? Like, can I think of anyone off the top of my head? No, but someone who is around 23, 24 and has 1 or 2 years left on their deal. Again, I feel like I had a ton of these before I started this sentence and then they all flew out of my head, but like, the short of this is, yes, I would absolutely take Owen Power. You got to get rid of Severson. I think 2 first-round picks plus your 4th overall pick from last year is a pretty steep price. But if you could get rid of the Severson contract as well, that feels worth it to me. And then you don't have to re-sign Provorov to, he wants a long-term deal. He wants, 8 years at $8 million or whatever, which is not confirmed, but it gives you that flexibility on defense. If you can get rid of Severson, then you're not locked into that contract until he's, 40 years old or whatever. You are locked into Owen Power's contract, which is more expensive, but he will only be 28 by the time the contract is done, right? And then you go from there. But I am higher on Owen Power than I think the average hockey person. I watched him play a ton at Michigan because that was the year, again, that all of the Michigan guys were going to go in the first round. So there was a lot of them to pay attention to. So I watched a ton of Michigan to see who the Blue Jackets were going to get. I was surprised that they went and got Kent Johnson, but obviously now it's working out really, really well for them. There's also, again, if you get rid of the Severson contract, then you replace it with the Power contract, then you don't have to go out and get Seth Jones, which feels like a mistake. I talked about that earlier this morning. But the Blue Jackets will still have, again, that cap flexibility to re-sign all of their young guys and also maybe have a little bit of spending money in free agency. Now, I don't think Mikko Rantanen is likely. I know there's a lot of up in the air about, maybe he doesn't want to re-sign in Carolina. Maybe the Hurricanes will trade him if they can't re-sign him, or there's I feel like every so often people are like, well, Trevor Zegras is maybe an option for young guy with term that fits into the timeline. I know that liking Trevor Zegras feels like kind of an unpopular take at the minute, but the guy's got all the skill in the world, right? Just needs to be able to put it together. And if you look at what Dean Evason has done with Kent Johnson this year, why can't he do the same thing with Trevor Zegras? Anyway, not to segue into something completely different. Mitch Marner is probably not going to be available either. I know I've been kind of half jokingly, half not banging that drum for a little while now. If the Blue Jackets should just give a huge contract to Mitch Marner or Mikko Rantanen, and then you've got, Marchenko, Fantilli, Marner / Rantanen for the next 8 years as your top line, which sounds like a lot of fun to me. But yeah, Owen Power. I am tentatively on board. Again, I don't think it's likely to happen, but I would love it if it did. I think that would be a lot of fun. That's all I've got today. Like I said, we'll be back tomorrow. We'll talk about tomorrow's game versus Dallas. Big game. Obviously, the Blue Jackets did not come out of the first one super great through a combination of bad injury luck and also some questionable officiating, shall we say. But this is the last time they have to face the Stars, and then they're done with them for the season, which is great for me, famous Dallas Stars hater. But we'll talk about that tomorrow. I've been Jay Foster. You can find me on Twitter at _Jacob Foster, JAKOBFORSTER. You can find the show at LO_Blue Jackets. If you have comments, questions, criticism, email me at lockedonbluejackets@gmail.com. Thank you once again for listening, and until tomorrow, make sure you stay locked on.